everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be talking about some eyeshadow palettes in my collection and if I would repurchase them. I've seen this video floating around with a lot of creators. I don't know who started it personally, but I will link some creators who I've seen done this video down below in the description box. If you know who started it, let me know. But I pulled out 10 palettes from my hoard of eyeshadow palettes. I'm gonna go over what I think of them, if I would repurchase them, and just all of my thoughts. So if all that sounds good to you, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I would love it if you stuck around. But with all that, let's just get started. All right, so eventually I do want to get through all of my palettes. I think next time I do this, because it was kind of hard to randomly pick palettes, I think next time I'm going to use like a random generator and we'll pick them out together, because it was just tough for me to pull out 10 palettes. I don't know. Each one I was like, maybe this one, maybe not. So that's what I think I'm going to do next time, and it might be a little bit more fun and just like off the cuff. I won't know which palettes are being pulled. Let's just start, I guess, with the top one here. And this is from PeriPera, and this is the Whisper of Milky Spring palette. I purchased about 3 of these palettes, and I did a Yesstyle haul. I will have any videos on these palettes, if there are videos, listed down below in the description box. All the makeup that I'm wearing is listed down below in the description box. So make sure you check that out so I don't have to keep saying it over and over again. But I did a Yesstyle haul, and I got like 3 of these PeriPera palettes. This one is the Whisper of Milky Spring, and you know, good formula. I think that it's a little bit more pigmented of what you would think of typical K-beauty. Now, it's not super pigmented, but it is a little bit. There's some payoff, and these shimmers are pretty sparkly while there's only 2. There's only 2, so it's not really a shimmer heavy palette. Besides that, I would not repurchase this. I think out of the 3, this one was my least favorite. It's just not a color story I love. And in order to be considered a palette I would repurchase, like the criteria is high at this point, is all I'm gonna say. Like willy-nilly, I just would not repurchase this. If I was really looking at them all, I don't think that this would. The other 2 that I have, I like much better than this one. I wouldn't not recommend it if you like these tones, but this really isn't mine. And I would say out of the 3, I reach for this one the least. Of course, I wanted to pull in a Natasha Denona palette, so I tried to just randomly grab one, and I ended up pulling in the Mini Lila palette. I purchased this before I purchased the full-size Lila, so I do have both, and based on that alone, like I wouldn't repurchase this because I have the full-size Lila. Is the formula okay? Like, yes, I really like how it's not just a purple palette. You can really go neutral if you want. So this is a good one in terms of having some versatility within 5 shades. You can really just have like a hint of purple. You can go full on purple. So I do like this mini, and I think the minis are great value. I know that the shades technically like cost per gram are more expensive. However, like if you just want the idea of a palette in small form, I think that this is great. It's not too much, and the formula is solid. I don't find the formula to be different from her normal size palettes. I don't know if other people think that, but I don't. I wouldn't say, you know, this is one of my most reach palettes for again. So unfortunately, I'd have to say, like, I just wouldn't repurchase it based on that. I'd rather just have my full-size Lila, because realistically, like, this is not a palette I would travel with, so I don't need it being compact because of that. So this would be a no. Now, next up, we're just gonna go small to big, I think, because the way I had these stacked, the big ones are at the bottom. This is the Bare Minerals Gen Nude Neutral Eyeshadow Palette. I believe I purchased a few of these from the recommendation of Jessica Braun, and I only have 2 of them left. I do have this neutral one, and it's passed through the declutters. Here's what it looks like. I like the size, I like the shadows, but considering my eyeshadow collection, this has what? This has 4 mattes, 2 shimmers, not even really spectacular shimmers. I have a hard time because like, I don't want to keep saying the same thing. This is a nice formula. I don't have a problem with these mattes. They blend really nice, but if I look into the rest of my eyeshadow palette collection and this was the only one that went missing, I would not repurchase this. I just don't think it's worth it. I think that there are other neutral palettes that suit me better. I think that what holds me back from wanting to repurchase this is for a neutral palette, I need a little bit more lightness. Like I do still want some depth, but these, you know, my skin tone is very, very light, especially now in winter. These are going to show up really dark on me. So it's just not a palette made for me specifically. Next time I do an eyeshadow palette declutter, unfortunately, this one might just go. I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if I should just declutter it now. I'm going to wait though. I'm going to wait. Maybe I'll pull it into a Shop My Stash and see if I can re-fall in love with it. Moving right along, Colourpop. Figured pull in some big brands here. But I have the Colourpop Making Mauves. I lusted over this palette. Like, I was, at the time I purchased this, I was buying a lot of Colourpop, like every single Colourpop release. And this one came out right about the time I was really starting to be like, okay, girl, like you need to stop. And so I wanted this one. I think I bought it on Black Friday. Here's what it looks like. I absolutely would repurchase this. And this is what I'm hoping to get out of these videos, is really looking through my palettes in like bite-sized pieces, only pulling 10 at a time and seeing what I would repurchase and what I wouldn't, not just to tell you, but to also tell me. Like right now we're on palette 4 and this is the only one I would keep out of the, or repurchase out of the 4. So that tells me like I'm impulsively buying palettes just too often. And come 2024, I just am going to, I need to like really work on that. That is something I need to work on with myself, on not just impulsively buying things, because this, I didn't impulsively buy. I wanted it for a very long time and I still love this palette. I think it's really great. This palette has just the standard Colourpop formula. Do I think it's like the greatest formula in the world? No, but you get really nice looks out of it. I don't find them to be patchy. I find the mattes to be buildable, which is personally what I like in a matte. And the tones are nice. This was really kind of like, you know, we saw peak mauves like over here. This was like right about here, like right when we were about to hit that peak for just mauves, mauves, mauves everywhere. So, you know, this is still a solid mauve palette. And even though it's supposed to be a monochromatic palette, I don't find it to be as monochromatic as some of Colourpop's other palettes that they have, their 9 pans. So I really like this one and I would repurchase this one again for sure. Now this next one, I struggle with this one because I know I don't get my money's worth out of this. I don't reach for it, but it's just past declutter after declutter. So this is a Bobbi Brown palette, and this is the Capri Nudes palette. I just love the shades in here. This is what I'm talking about when it has just lighter mattes, but also some dark building up shades. It has this really pretty navy with this silver. This is very much like a holiday palette to me. I think I saw, this is embarrassing, but I think I saw Desi and Katie get sponsored by this palette and use this palette in a video, which is why I ended up purchasing this. You know, Bobbi Brown's formula is hit or miss for me. There have been palettes I have absolutely loved, and there have been palettes that I have absolutely hated. This one falls right in the middle. It is definitely not the best formula, especially for whatever price I paid for this, probably too much. It's not worth that. This is like Colourpop quality. It doesn't have good quality, quite honestly. Like it works, I can get a look out of it, but it definitely takes some time. It definitely takes some finessing. There's just something about this palette though that I just can't get rid of. So it's passing my declutters, but I definitely wouldn't repurchase this. This is not something I reach for all the time. It's not an everyday palette. I really only think of this palette during holiday time. Like during right now, I'm always like, I need to pull in that Bobbi Brown palette. But then in the back of my head, I'm like, well, that palette's kind of a pain in the ass. So I don't know if I want to. That's the Bobbi Brown palette. Let's just move on. Let's go over the last luxury palette that I have. And then after that, are more mid-range. I pulled in this Tom Ford quad. Oops. This is actually the only Tom Ford quad I have left in my collection. I've decluttered the others. Not that I had a ton of them. I think I had 2. This one is 03 Nude Dip. I like this palette. I've used it. I mean, like, you can see that I've used it. Is it hit pan used? No, it's not. But for me, this is a used and well-loved eyeshadow palette. I wore this on Christmas before. I've worn it on New Year's. I love, love, love this palette. Now, the big question is, would I repurchase it? Maybe my standards are too high because I want to just like automatically say no to most of these. I do think I'd repurchase this actually. I like this palette a lot. While I don't use it all that often, and I do think that Tom Ford is a little bit overhyped, overpriced, I think that I would miss having this in my collection. I actually quite like it. I like having this like deep chocolate brown with this like champagne, even though this is like, all of these are the wet dry formula, which I do think is better than just his standard shadows. I get some really pretty looks out of this. I love this taupe shade here. I love all 4 of these shades. They can be really great one and done shadows. They are really stunning on the eyes. It would just hurt me to pay $88 for this, I guess, is where my hesitation lies. And that's the only thing. So I would wait, like I wouldn't repurchase this, run out and go get it today. I would wait for it to go on sale, but I would eventually repurchase this palette. Yeah, I would. I do want to try Mine Creeks. So for $88, you know, that's nice. I do want to try Tom Ford's like cream formula. If you've tried that formula, let me know down below because I want to pick up, I think it's called Rose Quartz or Quartz something. I want to pick that one up. It's on my list. And I get like Saks credits every year with like my credit card. So I might buy that palette with my Saks points. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Let me know your thoughts. Moving on, these 4 are actually, I think, all influencer brands. Let's start with Huda because that's what I'm like. I think she started off as an influencer, right? So I have 2 palettes from Huda Beauty. These are my only 2 palettes from Huda Beauty that I still have in my collection. I have Rose Quartz and I have the Rose Gold palette remastered. I never tried the original. Let's start with this one since it is the oldest palette. I pulled this into a Shop My Stash not that long ago, and while it doesn't look that well loved, I'm pretty light-handed with eyeshadow, and I can't say I've used this like 50 times, but I've used this, you know, 20, 25 times maybe, and I liked this palette more than I thought. When I pulled it into a Shop My Stash, I actually went into that thinking I was going to declutter this palette, and I really like it. These shimmers are just so soft. I mean, I barely put my finger in there, and like, this is an old palette. Like, they still work really great. I don't typically love warm tones that much, but I find this to not be too warm toned. It's really more pinky warm. Like, you have this bright pink here, and the mattes, like the grounding mattes, aren't super warm, orange, yellow, etc. So I can get away with using this palette and not feeling like I just have orange on my lids. So I do really like this, and I'm trying to decide if I would repurchase it. I kind of think I would. I like this matte here. I really like the shimmers, but I like this palette a lot more, and I think that people need to like pull it back out if you still have it and re-fall in love with it like I did when I pulled it into a Shop My Stash, because this is a pretty solid palette. I decluttered the new nude. I didn't buy the Empowered. Oh, I actually do have another one. I just realized because it's in my need to do like a palette ranking. I did buy the Pretty Grunge. I'm not going to talk about that one today, but I do have 3 Huda Beauty palettes. That one's just not in my full-on collection. It's in my I need to do a review on it drawer. The next one is the Rose Quartz. 100% I would repurchase this without even showing you what it looks like. This palette is beautiful. It's cool toned, it's pink, it's purpley. I love purple, I love cool tones. It's everything that I want in a palette, other than like this weird splotchy shade, which I think she's finally starting to understand people don't like that because she put a cream matte black, a cream black in the Pretty Grunge. The shimmers are really nice. You know, you kind of even have like some duochromes in here for mainstream. That's not too bad considering, you know, mainstream doesn't really do very impactful shimmers like indie in comparison to indie, but you kind of teeter with this and I have no bad things. These palettes would actually probably pair really well together if you had both of them. I should maybe try and do that, but I probably will not. I will say that I will, but I won't. The shimmers might go really well. I don't know. I think you could maybe come up with some good looks with both of these, but I would repurchase both of my Huda Beauty palettes. I'm definitely not a Huda Beauty stan. I don't buy all of her palettes, just the ones that speak to me, but the ones that I do have, I do really, really like. And then we have 2 more to talk about. Let's talk about this one because this is old and I thought it would be a good one to talk about. This is the Laura Lee Nudie Patootie palette. Here's what it looks like. Oh, I just dipped my finger all in it and messed up this shade. I don't like that at all. Try to repress that in. I used to watch Laura Lee a lot back in like peak YouTube, beauty YouTube. And so I bought this palette, but honestly, like, it's too warm tone for me. This is awkwardly shaped. It really, like, even 1 row smaller would be better. It's hard for me to fit in my drawers. Other than that, like this color story, I don't really go for like these kinds of shades. And I find this shade even like sticks out in this palette. Now, I do think that Laura Lee kind of was really the first one to come out, at least like dip toes into the pinky mauves, because for me, at least from what I remember, this was when pinky tones weren't as popular like the Making Mauves palette. And I think that's why I really bought this palette, more for this shade here. You know, this is a nice brown, but really like some of these like too warm tone for me, too warm tone. And the shimmers just like aren't impactful enough for me to want to get. I don't even know if this palette, like you can still purchase this palette, but I don't think that I would. It's just not one that I think about, not one that I reach for. So this is a pass. And the very last one I want to talk about is the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes. I ended up picking this up because for a little bit there, this was all over YouTube. I was seeing everyone talking about this, how great quality. Even Michelle Wong was talking about this. And so I ended up picking it up, and this is a great, great palette. No one talks about it anymore because it's old now, but this is a really great neutral palette. It's neutral. You know, I always hear Rachel Palmari talk about neutral with a twist. To me, this is neutral with a twist, and I love it so much. This is one that I would travel with. This one is just perfect. What was the one that I was talking about? Let me pull it out. The Bare Minerals Neutral, like I said, I wouldn't travel with this because of the shades. And this one I would, because you still have some light mattes here. Whereas the Bare Minerals, if I can open it, this is tough. Here we go. The Bare Minerals, like, yes, it kind of has like a shade similar right here, but this is actually much lighter. This one looks just a lot darker on my lid here. So I would much rather travel with this palette. It also, you know, it's not just a one-trick pony like this palette. It has these greens if you want to do something a little bit more olivey. I just find this palette to have so much versatility. I fell in love with this palette and I use it quite often. It's one that I just think, you know, got pushed down as new releases came out. I don't think Artist Couture has gotten good reviews on his palettes since then. Like, I don't think any of his palettes have done great, but this is a solid one. And if you can still get your hands on it, if it's not discontinued, I would 100% repurchase it. Out of all the palettes, so I have, well, we actually have a split here. So 5 that I would recommend and 5 that I just would not repurchase. If I was just talking to my friend and they asked a nice neutral palette for me to recommend to them, I would recommend this one. I like this one quite a bit. It's my favorite out of the 5. So these are the 5 that I would repurchase: the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes, Huda Beauty Rose Quartz, the Rose Gold Remastered, Tom Ford Nude Dip, and the Colourpop Making Mauves. Whereas these ones, like, not terrible, but definitely not my favorite. The Bare Minerals Gen Nude Neutral, Nudie Patootie from Laura Lee, Bobbi Brown Capri Nudes, the PeriPera Whispers of Milky Spring, and the Natasha Denona Mini Lila palette. So you'll have to let me know your thoughts down below. Like I said, I really want to do this video, not just to have a video, but to really like look at my collection as a whole and see what I would actually repurchase and what I love out of my collection. Because while it's nice to have a ton of stuff, it also can get overwhelming a little bit, and I want to just improve on making impulse purchases and just having them sit in my drawer. Like, that's not fun. Nobody likes that. I could use that money for other things. So let me know all your thoughts and opinions down below on these palettes, whether you love them, if they're your holy grails, or if you hate them, if I love them. Everyone has different opinions, and I love hearing them all. This is where I'm gonna leave you. I hope you're having a good one, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.